Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's time for the first victim. I've been looking forward to this day, getting a proper test stand and getting a motor on there and actually being able to run some tests in a safe manner, collect some data, and keep track of it so I know how to use my motors to the best of their ability. So the first victim is going to be this Turnigy SK3. This is a 3542 800 kV. I've got it set up with a 10.7 prop, and Right off, when I went back to the Hobby King website to look at the specs and the recommendations, because I wasn't sure which prop to use, so I thought, well, you know, I'll just go look and see what they recommend, and that's what they recommend. They recommend a 4 to 5 cell battery. They say it's 800 kV, max amperage is 42 amps, max power is 625 watts. So no other information, that's what they give you. So that's why this is kind of important. And by the way, I've actually done a little searching. This isn't, you know, that's not the only thing that I looked at. I actually did some searching to see what other people had to say about it. And, you know, the information is vague and sparse and the questions are kind of odd. You know, I saw one guy said, well, I'm going to be flying it on a plane that weighs between 1 and 4 pounds. That's pretty vague. So anyway, we're gonna hit the motor test. This is going to be the first one. I've already got myself a little document here that we're going to record the results, and let's see what happens. I'm going to start out with a 2200 4-cell. I don't know how many poles are in the motor, so I'm going to leave the default at 12, and I'll get an idea when I spin it up by looking at the KV. I'll get an idea if I'm in the right spot. If I'm not, I'll make an adjustment. It's a 10.7E APC prop, and you'll notice I have a 5-cell on this Turnigy UP610 on standby, so once we complete the 4-cell testing, we'll take a look at the 5-cell. So the main thing that we're going to look for is amperage. I look at amperage. The manufacturer says this thing should not draw over 42 amps. By the way, I had to dig through my ESC collection. I found a Supple 50 amp ESC, so I had to change that out. That's the beauty of this. It took me 2 seconds to change that out versus fighting with it in an airplane and binding receivers and all that stuff. That's what's so cool about this. But anyway, enough talking. Let's do some testing. All right, so 4-cell pack. I'm going to spool it up and make sure nothing unusual happens before I run it up to full power. Make sure my mount's on there stable. I don't see any unusual vibrations. Props on there nice and tight. I'm not balancing the props. I'll worry about that some other time. I just wanted to do a test. So, okay, everything felt good, so let's just run it up. We'll see what happens. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my camera down on the screen here so you can see it. So I won't be able to talk during the test, but we'll be able to talk after. So here we go. Let's run the first test. Okay, I saw 400 plus watts, and this thing is good for up to 600 watts, and it looks like the amp peak, it keeps the peak. That's cool. So, oh yes, nice. All right, watts peak is 478, amps peak is 32. So there's more headroom in there. That's what this tells me. So the 10.7, let's document this. Our watts peak, 478. Our amps peak is 32, and the efficiency went away. I didn't see that, and I also didn't catch the RPM, so I have to learn to look for that stuff. But let's run it up again. This time I'm going to take a look at the KV and see if we're at 800 kV. That's where we're supposed to be. So let's run it up and take a look at that. Yeah, 857 is what I saw, so I think that's okay. We actually, I'm going to document that. We saw an 857 actual. Okay, so what does that tell us? Let's talk about what that tells us. So we analyze this information. Let's go back to the tablet and see. Okay, so they're telling us we can go up to 625 watts, and we can go up to 42 amps. So we're only at 478 watts and 32 amps. That tells me 11-inch prop. That's what that tells me. So let me switch it over to an 11.7, and we'll see what happens with that. All right, so I've got an 11.7 and a 12.6, which should be functionally equivalent, but let's start with the 11.7 and see what happens with that one. Okay, we're going to run the 11.7 prop and we'll see what happens. So here we go. This will be, we'll just get this documented on our paperwork here. This is an 11/7, and let's punch it. Isn't this awesome? I love it. I love it. Data. Okay, here we go. 11.7 prop with a 4-cell pack. Ooh. I had to back off because it started to move, and I do not like that. I'm going to get another clamp on it. Hold on. All right, see, I'm not crazy. That's why I did this, because I knew, and that's kind of a small motor. This is not a big motor. Anyway, yeah, so that's why I did this, because this thing moved, and that's a relatively small motor. Imagine getting something like a Power 60 on there, something crazy like that. That'd be really nuts. All right, let's take a look at it again. All right, I was looking at the amps, paying attention to that, and I saw amps peak was 35. That doesn't seem right. 35, and then watts peak only said 516. RE is blank, and voltage min is blank. Okay, so switching from a 10.7 to an 11.7, we added 25, 35, 45 watts and only 3 amps. Boy, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right. That's what it says. All right. Well, that's why I got the 12.6 out. Let's give that a try. One thing I didn't look at is thrust, and I'll get that on the video because I'm recording the thrust, but I didn't look at thrust when I'm kind of watching the amps. I'm still kind of learning this test stand a little bit, so I'm kind of focused on things that I know will keep my equipment safe. So 32 amps is what it says. Oh, there's headroom in there because, go back to the book. The book says 625 watts, 42 amps. So we're still 7 amps shy of peak. And we're still 100 watts low. So guess what? It's time for a 12.6. All right, guys, here we go with a 12.6 APC, same 4-cell pack. Let's run it up and see what happens. All right, 37.6 is what I saw during the video, but let's see what it says. Oh, 38.29 and 554 on the wattage. Okay, 38.29 amps and 554 on the watts. So there's still another 7 amps in there to max. Now we don't have to max it out. The motor's not hot. The ESC not hot. So we can still coax a little more out of it by going to maybe a 13.6 or maybe even like a 12.7 or a 12.8. Let me rummage around and see what I got. I found myself a 12.8 wood prop, so we're gonna go with that. All right, we've got a 12/8. I'm gonna put an X next to that because that's a wood prop. And let's take a measurement on that and see what we come up with. Here we go. All right, we found it. I see 43 amps. That's 43.17, right? Yep, 43.17. And I see 613 watts. And there we go, 12.8. But there you go. Now, keep in mind, guys, the one thing that's important to take from this is that you don't have to go all out. You know, you don't have to go crazy and hit the peak. But that's the number for this motor. That's the number. So if I were trying to max out my power for this particular setup, I know I got a 600 watt motor, which that's pretty close. I mean, they're saying 625 at 42 amps, and I got 613 at 43. So they're off a little bit, or you know, maybe that's a manufacturing tolerance. I mean, that's a very small gap. So I'd say overall that's relatively accurate. And it looks like we got on this motor pretty close to what the manufacturer calls for on a 12.8 prop with 4S. So now we're going to switch to 5S, and I'm going to go back down. I'm going to go all the way back down to a 10.6. I'm going to start with that on the 5S and see what happens. I think I misspoke earlier. I meant to say 10.7. If I said 10.6, I meant to say 10.7. That's what's back on there. It's the 10.7 prop. Okay, I've got a freshly charged 5S pack, and we've got a 10.7 prop. And we're looking to stay at 42 amps or lower, and we'll see what happens. So here we go. Whoop. Okay, we just lost an ESC. Huh. Look at that. It says 2 to 7 lipo, 6 to 20. Yeah, we weren't even close, and we fried that ESC. How about that? Well, I guess the 5-cell testing is going to have to wait. But that ESC is gone. Hey, but you know what? QED. I mean, how bad would that have sucked if that happened inside your airplane? Then you got to tear all that crap apart. So, you know, now we got at least a test bench where we can say, yeah, don't buy that. That's a 50 amp ESC. We weren't even close. We hit 42, so it wasn't amperage. It was complaining about the voltage, but it definitely, either that or something about this motor. But I'm going to put the 4-cell back on there and just see if it spins over. Okay, so I went back to a 4-cell on the 30 amp ESC, and you have to run the throttle all the way up. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, and there we go. So yeah, nothing wasn't. Thankfully, it wasn't the stand. How about that? And I'm just going to double check the spec. Yeah, it says 2 to 7 cell LiPo, 5 amp, 60 amp max. It's an SP50. Huh? Well, I'm going to steal the ESC connector and maybe the servo wire off that thing, and maybe even the barrel connectors. But there you go, man. See, now nothing happened to my airplane, nothing happened to my receiver, all happened on a bench. It was worth it. So now the bummer is I got to discharge this thing. But there we go. There's the first test. I'm going to call it a success because at least we have information on the 4-cell. And I do have another ESC on the way. I have an 80 amp ZTW on the way. We will come back and test it with a 5-cell. But there we go, guys. The judge has spoken. And here we go. 12x8 wood prop, 613 watts, 43 amps. That's the thing for that motor on 4-cell. 5-cell, we'll see what happens when I get another ESC that I can use. All right, hope you enjoyed the video. I think this has been a lot of fun. I hope this information is useful to you. If it is, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you're notified when new information hits the channel. All right, take it easy. I don't know how many poles this has. That's interesting, because so let's take a look at what we got here. Yep, I got chargers talking to me. This is a 12.6 APC, and let's